to my channel, Greg Out and About. It's the end of another great camping season and time to get the RV ready for winter. In addition to the usual cleaning out of the fridge, cabinets, and laundry, I give the park hopper a good washing. I use a dishwashing scrub brush and warm water to get the bugs and sap off the trailer. Sometimes a gentle scraping is needed, and I use the back of the dishwashing brush to get stubborn stuff off. The rear and passenger sides of the park hopper are exposed to the sun while it's in its parking spot next to my house, so I apply a coating of UV protection to those sides. Most of the work of winterization involves making sure that your RV is ready for freezing temperatures. Water left in lines like supply lines or the fixtures or the drains or the tanks, when it freezes, it can break seals and cause leaks in your RV. And as you know, water in the wrong place in an RV is one of our worst enemies. So I'm going to tell you what I do to winterize my RV and get it ready for freezing temperatures in my particular area. How you winterize your RV could be a function of where you store it, where you live, etc., etc. So I'm going to tell you what's worked for me for the last 5 years. I live in the Pacific Northwest where winters are milder. In my area, the temperature will dip below freezing sometimes for several days at a time, but typically not for weeks on end. Thanks to our proximity to the relatively constant water temperature in the Pacific Ocean, we might get a couple of days of freezing weather, but usually it doesn't last long. Still, it just takes one good freeze to do damage to your RV's water systems if not prepared properly. I will start by flushing the hot water tank. First things first, make sure you've turned off the power to the hot water tank. Then open the pressure release valve at the top of the tank so the tank can drain easily. Then remove the anode rod and check the rod to see if it needs replacement. This rod was put in at the start of the camping season this year, and so it still looks pretty good. After the tank drains, I use this tank wand to hose out the interior of the hot water tank. Scaling and deposits should be cleaned out so they don't get sucked into your supply lines next season and cause clogs. This happened to me before. Even after just one camping season, you might have deposits in the tank that look like this, depending on the hardness of the water in your system. Now, because I'm using air pressure to push water out from all the supply lines, I replace the anode rod and close the hot water tank's pressure release valve. If you don't do that, then all the pressurized air you put into the system will escape through these openings. I use an air compressor to force air through the water supply lines. Get an adapter for your compressor so that it screws into the city water inlet. After the air compressor gets up to 100 psi, I set the pressure going out of the compressor to 30 psi. That's about all the pressure you need to push the water through the supply lines. Don't set it much higher than that, or you could end up bursting your pipes with too much air pressure. Once there is 30 psi in the system, open all of your faucets and fixtures one by one on both the hot and the cold sides. Now, 2 hints. 1, the water can come splurting out, so you might need to be prepared with some sort of shield to minimize cleanup. 2, this is the sound of just air in the lines, which will indicate to you that you can move on to the next fixture. Move on until you've opened and closed all fixtures on both the hot and cold side, and don't forget the outside shower fixture and the toilet. Make sure that any shutoff valves, particularly on the handheld shower handles, make sure they're open so that they will vent the water. For good measure, I also open the valves to the low point of the hot and cold supply lines. For all drain lines, I pour in about a cup of the pink stuff, RV antifreeze. This will make sure that the water in your drain lines doesn't freeze. These procedures to this point have put a few cups of water into my tanks. So I finish by draining the tanks. I can do this at home, so it's pretty convenient. If you don't have a sewer hookup at home, then just use a bucket or something and make sure all your tanks are empty. Okay, that does it for the water systems. Here are some final winterization items on my checklist. 1, I leave the park hopper connected to power in the off season so the batteries stay charged up. 2, I open the refrigerator door to prevent mildew from growing inside the fridge. 3, I close the slide out. And 4, I close the propane tank valve.
Storms are rolling into the Pacific Northwest. I always put on a jack cover just to protect all this. And this is the last thing I do to winterize my trailer. The park hopper is all tucked in after a very busy 17,000 mile season. So we'll see you soon and for more adventures in 2024. Until then, stay tuned.